my channel The Mental Traveler. I'm Caro Herrera, and today I'm going to be reading a biography called The Chief, The Life of William Randolph Hearst. It was written by David Nasaw and published in the year 2000. So, for those of you who don't know William Randolph Hearst, he was this American media tycoon who lived in the 19th and 20th centuries and who was the inspiration for Charles Foster Kane, the protagonist of the film Citizen Kane, which is considered by many the best movie ever made. Before I begin though, let me just say that this will be a spoiler-free video, so you can sit back and enjoy. I'll read the summary that's up on Goodreads because I really like it. David Nasaw's magnificent, definite biography of William Randolph Hearst is based on newly released private and business papers and interviews. For the first time, documentation of Hearst's interactions with Hitler, Mussolini, Churchill, and every American president from Grover Cleveland to Franklin Roosevelt, as well as with movie giants like Louis B. Mayer, Jack Warner, and Irving Thalberg, completes the picture of this colossal American. Hearst, known to his staff as the Chief, was a man of prodigious appetites. By the 1930s, he controlled the largest publishing empire in the country, including 28 newspapers, a cosmopolitan picture studio, radio stations, and 13 magazines. As a firm practitioner of what is known today as synergy, Hearst used his media stronghold to achieve political power unprecedented in the industry. Americans followed his metamorphosis from populist to fierce opponent of Roosevelt and the New Deal, from citizens to congressmen, and we're still fascinated today by the man characterized in the film classic Citizen Kane. In Nasaw's portrait, questions about Hearst's relationships are addressed, including those about his mistress in his Harvard days, who lived with him for 10 years, his legal wife Millicent, a former showgirl and the mother of his 5 sons, and Marion Davies, his companion until his death. Recently discovered correspondence with the architect of Hearst's world-famous estate, San Simeon, is augmented by taped interviews with the people who work there and witness Hearst's extravagant entertaining, shedding light on the private life of a very public man. I am giving this biography a 5 out of 5 stars review because I really enjoyed it, and thus I highly recommend it. The writing style is very smooth, and at times it read almost like a historical fiction novel, and these are my favorite kinds of biographies. It was very well researched, and I learned more than I could have expected about the legend of a man that was William Randolph Hearst. Everything about him was interesting, from his family origins to his childhood and Harvard years, to his work with newspapers, his attempts at trying to control his family's empire, his relationship with the woman in his life, his mother, his wife, and his decades-long mistress, his time in politics, his experiences in Hollywood, his life with Marion Davies, his final years, the effect Citizen Kane had on him, and the legacy he left. So yeah, this is a long book, but that isn't a drawback seeing as it's so complete. I learned tons in a manner that didn't overwhelm me, and I really wish I could have met William Randolph Hearst. He was such a fascinating man, and the bits about him that interested me the most were the way he ran his newspaper, since I worked at a newspaper myself, the love and companionship he shared with Marion Davies, his time in Hollywood, making movies and turning Marion Davies into a famous star, and finally, his most interesting creation for me, I think, San Simeon, the Mediterranean palace he built on top of a hill in California, where he invited everyone from Clark Gable and Charles Chaplin to Winston Churchill, a place where he collected the treasures of several civilizations, and which can now be visited as a tourist. There were some parts of this biography that weren't agreeable, and that would have to be his initial fondness for Hitler and Mussolini. The naivety he seemed to have about these 20 years prior to World War II reminded me of all the British politicians who didn't believe Churchill when he foresaw what Hitler would become. And yet Hearst and Churchill were friends of a sort, and it was also cool to learn how William Randolph Hearst influenced American politics, how he shaped the minds of a whole nation with his newspapers and movies and newsreels, and how, not even with all the power in the world, was he able to become president or of stopping Citizen Kane from being released. And while Charles Foster Kane is not 100% accurate depiction of Hearst, nor is Kane's second wife all that similar to Marion Davies, I still like the movie, but I think I'm more interested now in the life of Hearst than I am in that of Charles Foster Kane. Not because Kane is a fictional character, but because Hearst was a more complex human being and thus more relatable. Okay, so I've always loved old Hollywood movies for as long as I can remember, and while I can't really recall the first time that I watched Citizen Kane, I do remember that it wasn't one of my favorite old Hollywood movies. It took me a while to watch it, but when I did, I really liked it, and I still do. Over the years, I've rewatched it, and every time my love for it grows. Why? Well, because not only do I love old Hollywood, but because I am a journalist, so reading about the life of a media tycoon is very interesting. Also, Orson Welles did just a fantastic job directing, producing, starring in this movie, and he was only like in his early 20s when he made it. And he really manages to capture the spirit of a man in all the ages of his life, from when he's a young man to an old one. But what has always struck to me the most about Citizen Kane is the protagonist. His story and this particular idea of this old billionaire making a fabulous mansion for himself and his wife, a palace full of splendors that becomes a gilded prison. And while I can't really remember either the first time that I learned about William Randolph Hearst, it was probably whenever I was researching Citizen Kane. And as time has gone by, I've seen different movies about William Randolph Hearst and Citizen Kane, the making of that film. So my interest for Hearst has only grown with time. Some of these films have been RKO 281, The Cat's Meow, and Mank. But I think that the first one was the one that made the first impression on me on who Hearst was, because I actually have this very vivid memory now that I'm remembering of Melanie Griffith and James Cornwell, who portray Hearst and his lover, Marion Davies, acting in that movie together. So maybe that was what first stuck with me about Hearst. But yeah, many years later, when Mank was released in December of 2020, my interest for Hearst and Marion Davies was rekindled, mainly because of the beautiful acting done by Amanda Seyfried and Charles Dance. So I began looking up biographies of Marion Davies, and I unfortunately couldn't find that many as ebooks. So on May 2021, I temporarily gave up my quest for one of them. But I decided that the best next thing I could do was to read a biography on William Randolph Hearst. So I did some research, and I decided that I should read the book by Nasaw because it was the one that was most updated and it had really great reviews. So I bought the book, and I remember starting reading it on a Friday night, and I finished it by Thursday night, so less than a week. If I hopefully visit San Simeon one day, I would love to do a review about that experience. And if I ever read more books about the people or characters I've mentioned, I'll do a review for them as well. But until then, I believe that this is all I have to say about The Chief, this biography. Thank you so much for watching my review of it. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you thought of it, if you liked it or not, as well as what are your own thoughts regarding William Randolph Hearst, Marion Davies, Citizen Kane, San Simeon, the biography, author's biography of Hearst, anything that's relevant. I would love to really talk about it all with you. In the description box below, also, you can find a link to the book's Goodreads page. And well, I'm Caro Herrera, the Mental Traveler, and I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you're in the world. I'll be seeing you soon. Take care and goodbye.